The doctor's hands were shaking when he handed me the file. Not my hands, his. That's how I knew my life was about to end. Mr. I don't know how to tell you this. He wouldn't meet my eyes. According to these DNA results, you're not biologically related to any of your children. I laughed, actually laughed, because the alternative was to start screaming in that sterile office and never stop. That's impossible! I have 7 kids! 7! He pushed the paper across the desk. 23 years of my life, reduced to numbers and percentages, and a single word stamped across 7 names. Excluded. My daughter Emma's crooked smile. My son David's green eyes. Little Sophie's laugh. Michael's stubborn chin. All 7 of them. Not mine. Every single one. Let me back up, because I know what you're thinking. How does a man not know? How do you miss something like that for over 2 decades? I'll tell you how. You're too busy building an empire to notice the cracks in your foundation. Too arrogant to see what's right in front of your face. Too in love with your own success to realize your entire life is a lie. My name used to open doors, command respect, make investors sweat and competitors flinch. I thought I had it all. The mansion in Connecticut, the private schools, the family vacations to places most people only see in magazines. I thought money could buy security. I was wrong. For 18 years, Marcus drove me everywhere. My chauffeur. Quiet, reliable, the kind of man who knew when to speak and when to disappear into the background. He was there for everything. Late nights at the office, early flights, family trips. He became part of the furniture, essential but invisible, just like good help should be. I never questioned why my wife Sarah insisted we keep him, even when I wanted to hire someone younger. I never wondered why my kids ran to greet him every afternoon before they even looked for me. I never noticed that Emma had his exact smile, that distinctive crooked thing that made her look like she was always keeping a secret, because she was. They all were. The truth is, I was building my fortune while Marcus was building my family. It happened on a Tuesday. Isn't that how these things always go? The worst moments of your life disguise themselves as ordinary days. My brother needed a kidney transplant. Routine screening, simple genetic matching to see if I was compatible. That's when the house of cards collapsed. I remember walking out of that medical building into the parking lot, and the September sun felt like it belonged to someone else's life. The air smelled like rain that hadn't fallen yet. My car was right there, the same Mercedes Marcus had driven for nearly 2 decades. And I thought, how many times did they laugh at me? How many times did he drop me off at the office, then turn around and go back to my house, to my bed, to my wife? The rage came first, white and blinding and pure. I wanted to burn everything down, the house, the cars, the carefully constructed life I'd worked so hard to build. Then came something worse than rage. The realization that I'd loved those children with everything in me. That Emma's crooked smile had made me laugh 1,000 times. That I'd taught David to ride a bike and held him when he cried over his first breakup. That Sophie called me daddy and meant it. She meant it. And now what? All those bedtime stories, scraped knees, first days of school, proud moments at graduation, were they supposed to mean nothing? Was I supposed to stop loving them because of 4 letters on a lab report? Biology said they weren't mine. But 23 years of my life said different. I confronted Sarah that night, sat across from her at our dining table, the same table where we'd shared thousands of meals, where our kids had done homework and blown out birthday candles and spilled milk and laughed until they couldn't breathe. How long? I asked. She didn't even try to deny it. She looked at me with those cold blue eyes and said 3 words that broke me. Since the beginning. Not an affair, not a mistake, a choice, 7 times over. Why? My voice didn't sound like mine. "Why would you?" "Because you were never there." She said it so simply, like it was obvious. "You were busy conquering the world, and Marcus was there. In the mornings when I needed someone to talk to, in the evenings when the kids needed a father who actually showed up. You paid for everything, but you missed everything." I wanted to hit her. God forgive me, I wanted to flip that table and destroy everything in reach. But I just sat there, frozen, while she calmly explained how my entire life had been a performance I was too blind to see. "What about Marcus?" I finally asked. "What does he think about all this?" She looked away. "Marcus doesn't know." That's when my blood turned to ice. "What do you mean he doesn't know?" He thinks only Emma might be his, from an affair years ago. He doesn't know about the others. I never told him." So I wasn't the only fool. I was just the biggest one. I haven't told you what happened next, the confrontation with Marcus, the decision I had to make about my children, the moment I looked into Emma's eyes and had to choose between truth and love. I haven't told you about the legal battle, or what Sarah did when I threatened to expose everything, or how my kids reacted when they finally learned the truth. I haven't told you about the night I stood in 7-year-old Sophie's room watching her sleep and realized that DNA doesn't make you a father. Showing up does. Being there does. Love does. What I discovered in the aftermath broke me into pieces. What I learned in the darkness rebuilt me into someone I barely recognize. And what I'm about to share with you over these next chapters might change everything you think you know about family, betrayal, and what it really means to be a man. This is my testimony. This is my truth. And it starts with a single question I couldn't answer. If they're not mine by blood, are they still mine by choice? If this story has grabbed hold of something inside you, if you've felt betrayal, if you've questioned your own reality, if you've ever wondered what you'd do in my shoes, then I need you to do something. Hit that like button. Not for me, for every person watching this right now who feels alone in their pain. Drop a comment and tell me, what would you do? And subscribe, because the next chapter reveals what happened when I confronted Marcus, and his answer will shatter everything you think you know about this story. Some secrets are too heavy to carry alone. Let's carry this one together. I drove home with that DNA report in my passenger seat like a bomb waiting to detonate. Every red light felt like torture. Every mile between the medical building and my house in Connecticut was another chance to turn around, to pretend I'd never seen those results, to choose willful ignorance over devastating truth. But I kept driving because part of me, the part that built a fortune by facing hard realities, needed to know how deep this betrayal went. I needed to see Sarah's face when I asked her the question that would destroy us both. The house looked exactly as it always had. Stately, perfect, the kind of home you see in architectural magazines. 14 rooms of carefully curated furniture and family photos that now felt like evidence in a crime scene. I pulled into the circular driveway, and there was Marcus washing my car. Our car. His car? I didn't even know what belonged to whom anymore. He looked up and smiled. That easy, genuine smile I'd always appreciated. The smile of a man who'd been loyal to me for 18 years. Except he hadn't been loyal at all. He'd been sleeping with my wife and raising his children under my roof while I signed the checks. I didn't say anything to him. I couldn't trust what would come out of my mouth. Instead, I walked past him into the house, my footsteps echoing on marble floors I'd paid for, in a home I'd built for a family that wasn't mine. Sarah was in the kitchen, humming while she chopped vegetables for dinner. She looked beautiful in that effortless way that had first attracted me 25 years ago. Her blonde hair caught the late afternoon sun. She glanced up when I entered, and her smile froze when she saw my face. "We need to talk," I said. My voice sounded hollow, dead already. She put down the knife slowly, wiped her hands on a towel, and followed me to the dining room. We sat across from each other at the mahogany table where we'd hosted dinner parties and celebrated holidays, where Emma had done her homework, where David had nervously introduced his first girlfriend, where Sophie had spilled grape juice on my lap and cried until I promised I wasn't mad. Every memory felt poisoned now, tainted by the truth I was holding in my shaking hands. I pushed the DNA report across the table, watched her eyes scan the page, watched the color drain from her face, watched her not even try to deny it. That's when I knew for certain. This wasn't a mistake or a mix-up at the lab. This was real. "How long?" I asked, the only question that mattered. She looked me straight in the eye and said, "Since the beginning." Those 3 words killed something inside me that I knew would never come back. Sarah didn't cry. That's what got me. She sat there with her hands folded on the table, calm as someone discussing vacation plans, and told me the truth I'd been too blind to see for 23 years. Marcus hadn't seduced her. She'd chosen him, deliberately, repeatedly, with full knowledge of what she was doing and full acceptance of the consequences. She'd been in control the entire time. "You were never here," she said, her voice steady. "Not emotionally, not physically. You were always at the office or traveling or making deals. I was alone in this big house with a baby, and you were conquering the world. Marcus was here. He listened. He saw me." She paused, letting that sink in. "He was more of a husband to me than you ever were." I wanted to rage at her, to flip the table and scream about betrayal and lies and how she'd stolen my life. But she kept talking, and every word was a knife finding soft tissue. She told me about the first time, how it happened 6 months after Emma was born. I'd been in Tokyo for 3 weeks closing a merger. She'd been home with postpartum depression and a colicky infant. Marcus had stayed late one night to fix something in the garage. They talked, she'd cried, he'd held her, and then he'd become everything I wasn't. "Every single one of them?" I asked, my voice breaking. "All 7? "All 7, she confirmed without hesitation. "I wanted a family. You wanted an empire. Marcus wanted to be a father. You wanted to be a king. So we made it work." The audacity of it stunned me. This wasn't a moment of weakness or a drunken mistake. This was architecture, planning, a parallel life built in the shadows of mine. She'd deliberately gotten pregnant 7 times with another man, brought those children into my home, let me love them, let me believe they were mine, all while knowing the truth. She'd watched me stand at graduations and beam with pride, watched me teach them to swim and read bedtime stories, watched me pour my heart into children who shared none of my DNA. "Did you ever love me?" The question escaped before I could stop it. I hated how pathetic it sounded, how desperate. She considered it for a long moment. "I loved the idea of you. I loved what you could provide. But love you?" She shook her head slowly. "I don't think I ever did. Not really. Not the way I loved Marcus." There it was, the final nail. Not just betrayal, but absence of love. I'd spent 25 years married to a woman who'd never actually wanted me beyond my wallet and last name. I was a means to an end, a paycheck, a facade of legitimacy while she built her real life with the help. "Does he know?" I asked. "Does Marcus know about all of them?" Her eyes flickered, the first crack in her composure. "No, he thinks only Emma is his, a mistake we made once. He doesn't know about the others." And there it was, the first card in my hand. The first piece of leverage in a game I hadn't known I was playing until I'd already lost everything. I couldn't sleep that night, couldn't eat, couldn't think about anything except the question burning a hole in my brain. What would I say to Marcus? Sarah had gone to bed in the guest room without another word, as if confessing to 23 years of calculated betrayal was just another Tuesday evening. I sat in my study, staring at family photos that now felt like mockery. Every smile a lie, every memory contaminated. At dawn, I was waiting in the garage when Marcus arrived for work. He pulled up in his beat-up Honda, the same car he'd driven for years despite my offers to help him upgrade. A modest man, a good man, I'd always thought. The kind of employee you could trust. The irony tasted like acid in my mouth. "Morning, sir," he said, climbing out of his car. That respectful distance he'd always maintained. Sir, always sir, even while he was fathering children in my bed. "We need to talk, Marcus, inside, now." He followed me into my study, confusion creasing his weathered face. He was 53, 4 years older than me. Gray at the temples, laugh lines around his eyes. Those green eyes that I'd somehow never noticed David and Michael shared. Willful blindness or stupidity? I couldn't decide which was worse. I handed him the DNA report without preamble, watched him scan it, watched understanding dawn slowly, then horror, then something I didn't expect. Tears. Real, genuine tears streaming down his face as he looked at those 7 names. Emma, David, Sophie, Michael, James, Christopher, Grace, all marked excluded from my genetic line. "Oh, God," he whispered. "Oh, God, no." "You knew about Emma," I said flatly. "Sarah told me. You thought she was yours, but you didn't know about the others, did you?" He collapsed into a chair like someone had cut his strings. "Emma, we made a mistake. One time, years ago. She swore it would never happen again. She said you'd forgiven her, that you'd moved past it. I believed her. I thought," his voice cracked, "I thought Emma was the only one." I laughed, bitter and sharp. "She lied to both of us, Marcus. She's been lying to everyone for 23 years. Those aren't my children. They're yours. All of them. Every single one." He looked at me with such raw anguish that I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. "I didn't know," he said hoarsely. "I swear to God, I didn't know. If I'd known, I would have—" He stopped. What would he have done? Left? Claimed them? Destroyed their lives earlier instead of now? "Would you have told me?" I asked. "Would you have been man enough to admit what you'd done?" He didn't answer, couldn't answer, because we both knew the truth. He'd taken the coward's way out. 1 child he could pretend was an accident. 7? That was a conspiracy. That was deliberate destruction of another man's life, whether he'd fully understood it or not. "They're good kids," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Whatever else is true, they're good kids." "They are," I agreed. "And they don't know yet. Sarah hasn't told them, neither have I. So we have a choice to make, Marcus. We can destroy them by telling the truth, or we can destroy ourselves by keeping the lie. If you discovered your entire family was built on a lie, would you tell the children the truth, even knowing it would destroy their sense of identity forever? Or would you keep the secret to protect them, knowing you'd have to carry that weight alone for the rest of your life?" Emma found me crying in my study 3 days later. I thought I'd locked the door, but she had a key. I'd given it to her years ago, when she was in high school and needed a quiet place to work on her college applications. She was 21 now, home from Yale for fall break. Beautiful and brilliant, and everything a father could want in a daughter. Except I wasn't her father. Not really. Not in the way that mattered to the law or science or whatever cruel God designed this nightmare. "Dad?" Her voice was soft, concerned. That crooked smile, Marcus's smile, turned down with worry. "Dad, what's wrong?" I couldn't tell her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. So I lied, the way Sarah had been lying for 23 years. "Just work stress, sweetheart. Nothing for you to worry about." She didn't believe me. Emma was too smart for that. She crossed the room and wrapped her arms around me, and I held on to her like she was the only solid thing in a world that had turned to water. She smelled like her mother's shampoo and her own perfume, that expensive French one I'd bought her for her birthday. When had I last really looked at her? Really seen her? She had Sarah's cheekbones, but Marcus's eyes, his nose, his stubborn chin. How had I missed it? "Whatever it is," she said into my shoulder, "we'll figure it out. We always do. That's what family does." Family. The word felt like broken glass in my chest. What was family? Was it blood and DNA and genetic markers? Or was it this girl who called me dad, who trusted me, who loved me, despite spending her whole life with a lie at its foundation? If I told her the truth, would she still love me? Would any of them? David came home later that week, 19, cocky, full of the invincibility of youth. He looked so much like Marcus, it hurt to see him. Same build, same walk, same way of running his hand through his hair when he was thinking. He'd always been my favorite, though I'd tried never to show it. We'd bonded over basketball and bad action movies. He wanted to be an architect like his old man, like the man he thought was his old man. "Hey, Pops," he said, dropping his duffel bag in the foyer. "Miss me?" I wanted to tell him everything. Wanted to scream that I wasn't his pops, that his real father was washing cars in the garage, that his whole life was constructed on lies his mother had told. But I looked at his grin, that uncomplicated joy, and I couldn't do it. Not yet. Sophie was easier to avoid. At 7, she was still young enough to not notice the tension crackling through the house. She'd climb into my lap after dinner and chatter about her day at school, about her friends, about the hamster she desperately wanted. I'd hold her and breathe in her strawberry-scented shampoo and wonder if she'd remember these moments when everything fell apart. Would she remember that I loved her, or would she only remember that I wasn't really hers? Sarah watched all of this from the margins. She knew what I was going through, saw me fragmenting in real time, but she said nothing. We existed in the same house like ghosts, passing each other in hallways, speaking only when necessary. She slept in the guest room, I slept in my study. Marcus continued to show up for work every day, his eyes hollow, his movements mechanical. We'd made an unspoken agreement, maintain the facade until we figured out what came next. But maintaining the facade was killing me. Every dinner was torture. Every "I love you, Dad" was a knife. Every moment of normalcy was a reminder that normal was gone forever. I was living in a house full of people I loved who didn't belong to me. Or maybe I was the one who didn't belong to them. I hired a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. Margaret Chen, the best divorce attorney in Connecticut, known for her scorched earth tactics and zero sympathy for cheating spouses. She had a corner office in Hartford with a view of the river and a reputation for destroying unfaithful partners in court. Her retainer cost more than most people's annual salary. I didn't care. I wanted blood. "This is quite a situation," she said after I'd laid out the details. She didn't look shocked or sympathetic. She looked hungry. 23 years of paternity fraud, 7 children, all fathered by your employee while living in your home, supported by your income? This is going to be a landmark case. "I want her destroyed," I said. "Financially, socially, legally, everything. I want her to understand what she's done." Margaret smiled that shark smile lawyers get when they sense a big payday. "We can certainly pursue that. Paternity fraud isn't a crime in Connecticut, unfortunately, but we can go after her for fraud, emotional distress, reimbursement of child support. We're talking millions, maybe tens of millions when you factor in 23 years of expenses. She paused. But you need to understand something. If you go this route, it becomes public. The children will know. Everyone will know. Your business associates, your friends, your family. There's no containing this once it hits the courts. I'd thought about that, obsessed over it during those sleepless nights. What's my alternative? Quiet divorce, no fault. You walk away clean. Set up trusts for the children if you want to maintain relationships with them. Never tell them the truth. Let them think it's just a normal divorce. It happens all the time. Let her get away with it. Let her keep the secret, Margaret corrected. There's a difference. You'd know the truth. She'd know you know. But the kids stay innocent. I hated how much sense it made. I hated that the merciful option meant swallowing my rage and grief and walking away like none of it mattered. I hated that protecting the children meant protecting Sarah from consequences. How much would I owe, I asked, in child support, if I just divorced quietly? Margaret consulted her notes. Connecticut law says you're on the hook until they're 18, regardless of paternity, since you've acted as their father. Sophie's 7, so 11 more years. James is 14, Christopher is 12. That's, she calculated quickly, roughly $30,000 a month in child support for the next decade, plus college tuitions. You're looking at close to $5 million total. $5 million to support another man's children? To maintain a lie? To protect kids who would grow up thinking I'd abandoned them for no reason? Because how could I explain without telling the truth? And if I tell them? I asked quietly. If I bring it all to light? Then you potentially owe nothing. The older ones are adults, Emma, David. The younger ones, we'd argue Sarah defrauded you into a parental role. We'd probably win. But, she leaned forward, those kids would know their whole life is a lie. They'd know their mother is a monster. They'd know Marcus is their biological father. Emma's 21. She'd have to restructure her entire identity. David would have to confront that everything he believed about himself is fiction. Sophie? She shook her head. Sophie's 7. That kind of trauma at that age, it doesn't heal. I sat there in that expensive office with its view of the river and realized I was trapped. Every choice was agony. Tell the truth and destroy 7 innocent people? Keep the lie and destroy myself? Pursue justice and become the villain who ripped a family apart? Walk away quietly and let Sarah win? I need time, I said finally. Margaret nodded. Take it, but not too much. The longer you wait, the harder the questions become. Would you pay millions to support children who aren't biologically yours just to protect them from a devastating truth? Or would you choose your own freedom and let them face the consequences of their mother's choices, even knowing it would shatter them forever? Marcus asked to meet me on neutral ground, a diner off Route 95, the kind of place where truckers and construction workers ate breakfast, not somewhere anyone from my world would recognize us. I arrived first, chose a booth in the back, ordered coffee I wouldn't drink. He showed up 10 minutes later looking like he'd aged a decade in the past 2 weeks, gray, exhausted, haunted. Thank you for coming, he said, sliding into the booth across from me. Formal, awkward. We'd known each other for 18 years, but had never been in this position before. 2 men who'd shared the same woman, the same children, the same house, without ever acknowledging the truth of what we were to each other. What do you want, Marcus? I was too tired for pleasantries. He pulled out a manila envelope, slid it across the table. My resignation, effective immediately. I've also liquidated my savings. It's about $140,000. It's yours. I know it doesn't come close to what you've spent on my kids, but it's everything I have. I stared at the envelope without touching it. You think money fixes this? No. His voice was hollow. Nothing fixes this. But I need you to understand something. He leaned forward, his eyes, those green eyes David and Michael inherited, meeting mine directly for the first time. I didn't do this to hurt you. I know how that sounds. I know it's the worst kind of excuse. But I loved Sarah. I loved her in a way that made me stupid and selfish and blind to what I was destroying. You loved her. I let the words hang there, bitter. So that makes it okay? You loved her, so you got to have everything? My wife, my home, my children? They were never yours, he said quietly, and for a moment I wanted to reach across that table and strangle him. Not because of DNA, but because you were never there. I was there, man, every night, every morning. When Emma had nightmares, when David broke his arm, when Sophie learned to walk. I was the one who showed up. You were the one who paid for everything, but missed everything. The truth of it cut deeper than any lie could have. Because he was right. I'd built an empire and missed my children's lives. I'd provided everything except presents. I'd given them a father's money, but not a father's time. And Marcus had filled that void so completely that 7 children called him by his first name, but ran to him before they ran to me. Sarah told me something, I said, my voice shaking. She said she loved you, not me. That she never really loved me. That I was just useful, a means to an end. Something flickered in Marcus's face. Pain, guilt. She told me the same thing about you. That you didn't love her, that you were married to your work, that I was the one she needed. He paused. I think she loved what we each gave her. You gave her status and security. I gave her attention and affection. She played us both. The realization settled over us like ash. We'd both been Sarah's pawns, different pieces on the same board. She'd orchestrated everything. The affair, the children, the years of deception. She'd built a life where she got everything she wanted by keeping both of us in our assigned roles. Me as the provider, Marcus as the present father. Neither of us the whole picture. Both of us too blind or too willing to see the game. What are you going to do? Marcus asked finally. The kids, are you going to tell them? I don't know, I admitted. My lawyer says I should. Get tested, prove paternity fraud, walk away clean. But Emma looks at me like I hung the moon. David wants to be like me. Sophie calls me daddy. How do I tell them none of that was real? It was real, Marcus said urgently. That's the thing you have to understand. Those kids love you. What you gave them, the security, the opportunities, the belief they could be anything, that was real. I gave them my time and my blood. You gave them their futures. We both made them who they are. I wanted to believe him, wanted to think that 23 years of love and sacrifice wasn't nullified by a lab report. But how could it be real when the foundation was fiction? Emma confronted me on a Saturday morning. I was in the garage, looking at the Mercedes Marcus used to drive, wondering if I should sell it or burn it or just keep staring at it like it held answers. She appeared in the doorway, backlit by autumn sun, and I knew immediately that something had changed. Her face was different, harder, older. I found the DNA report, she said without preamble. It was in your study, in the locked drawer. I still have the key you gave me, remember? She held up a piece of paper, my copy of the results that had destroyed everything. So this is why you've been falling apart. This is why Marcus quit. This is why Mom's been sleeping in the guest room. My throat closed. This was the moment I'd been dreading. The moment I'd been simultaneously running from and hurtling toward. Emma, is it true? Her voice cracked. All of us? I couldn't lie to her. Not anymore. Not when she was standing there with the evidence in her hand and devastation on her face. Yes. She made a sound like she'd been punched, staggered back against the doorframe. "Oh my God! Oh my God!" Her hands were shaking. "Marcus is my father! Marcus is my actual father!" "Biologically," I said carefully. "But Emma, don't!" She held up a hand. "Don't you dare tell me it doesn't matter. Don't tell me DNA isn't important. You've been walking around this house like a ghost for 2 weeks because DNA is the only thing that matters. So don't patronize me now." She was right. I'd been drowning in the importance of biology while simultaneously wanting to deny it. I wanted it to matter when it justified my pain, but not matter when it came to my love for these kids. You can't have it both ways. Truth doesn't negotiate. "I always wondered," she said quietly, sinking down to sit on the garage step, "why I looked so different from David and Sophie. Why I had these eyes that didn't match anyone else's. Mom told me I looked like her grandmother. I believed her, because why wouldn't I? You don't question your own existence." I sat down beside her, not touching, just present. "I didn't know," I said. "For 23 years, I didn't know. If I had known, what?" She turned to look at me, her eyes, Marcus's eyes, wet with tears. "What would you have done? Divorced Mom when I was a baby? Sent me away? Told me I wasn't yours?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Maybe I would have loved you anyway. Maybe I would have tried to make it work. Or maybe I would have run. I'd like to think I would have stayed, but I honestly don't know what kind of man I was back then." "And now?" she asked. "What kind of man are you now? Are you going to tell David, Sophie, the others? Are you going to blow up 7 lives because Mom couldn't keep her legs closed?" The crudeness shocked me. Emma had always been so polished, so controlled. But I guess finding out your entire existence is a lie strips away whatever pretense you've been maintaining. "I don't want to hurt any of you," I said. "That's the God's honest truth. I've been in hell trying to figure out how to do the right thing when there is no right thing." She was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Does Marcus know? About all of us?" "He knows now. He didn't before. He thought you were the only one." Jesus. She laughed, but it was bitter, broken. "So Mom lied to everyone, built a whole empire of lies. And we're just, what? The collateral damage?" "You're not damage," I said firmly. "You're the best thing that ever happened to me. You and your brothers and sisters, that's the part that's killing me. I loved being your father. I loved every second of it. And now I don't know what I am." "And now?" she asked. "What kind of man are you now? Are you going to tell David, Sophie, the others? Are you going to blow up 7 lives because Mom couldn't keep her legs closed?" The crudeness shocked me. Emma had always been so polished, so controlled. But I guess finding out your entire existence is a lie strips away whatever pretense you've been maintaining. "I don't want to hurt any of you," I said. "That's the God's honest truth. I've been in hell trying to figure out how to do the right thing when there is no right thing." She was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Does Marcus know? About all of us?" "He knows now. He didn't before. He thought you were the only one." Jesus. She laughed, but it was bitter, broken. "So Mom lied to everyone, built a whole empire of lies. And we're just, what? The collateral damage?" "You're not damage," I said firmly. "You're the best thing that ever happened to me. You and your brothers and sisters, that's the part that's killing me. I loved being your father. I loved every second of it. And now I don't know what I am." Emma turned to me then, her face fierce through the tears. "You're my dad. That's what you are. Not my father. I guess that's Marcus. But you're my dad. You're the one who taught me to drive, who helped me with my college essays, who called me every week at Yale just to check in. Biology didn't do that. You did." Something broke open in my chest. Relief and pain mixed together so intensely I couldn't breathe. I want that to be enough, I whispered. I want that to matter more than blood. Then let it, she said. Let it be enough. Don't tell the others, please. Let them keep believing what I wish I still believed, that we're a normal family with normal problems. Don't destroy them to make yourself feel better. I called a family meeting for Sunday dinner. Sarah knew what was coming, I told her that morning. She'd gone pale but nodded silently. Marcus wasn't invited. This was between me and the people I'd called family for 23 years. Emma sat beside me, her hand gripping mine under the table. David sprawled in his usual chair, oblivious. Sophie colored at the other end of the table. Michael and James were home from college, joking about something that had happened at a party. Christopher, my 15-year-old, was on his phone. Grace, 17, was texting someone and smiling. A normal family dinner. Except everything about it was abnormal. I need to tell you all something, I said. My voice sounded strange, rehearsed, like I was giving a presentation instead of dismantling 7 lives. Your mother and I are getting divorced. The words landed like grenades. Sophie's crayon stopped mid-stroke. David sat up straight. Michael and James exchanged glances. Christopher looked up from his phone. Grace's smile disappeared. 7 pairs of eyes swiveled to me, then to Sarah, then back to me. "What?" David said. "Why? What happened?" I'd rehearsed this, practiced in front of the mirror like a coward, consulted with Emma about how much to say, decided on the kindest lie I could construct from the ashes of truth. We've grown apart. Your mother and I want different things. It's nobody's fault. These things happen. The oldest lie in the divorce handbook, bloodless, generic, safe. That's bullshit, David said, his voice rising. People don't just grow apart after 25 years. Something happened. What happened? I looked at Emma. She gave the smallest shake of her head. Don't tell them. Protect them. Let them hate you for leaving, but don't make them hate themselves for existing. Sometimes marriages just run their course, Sarah said, her voice steady, practiced. She'd always been better at lying than me. Your father and I have been unhappy for a long time. We're doing the mature thing and ending it before it gets worse. Where are you going? Sophie asked, her voice small and scared. Daddy, where are you going? That nearly broke me. Daddy. She was 7 years old, and her world was shattering, and she didn't even know the real reason why. I'm going to get an apartment in the city, I said gently, but I'll see you all the time. Weekends, holidays, nothing really changes. Everything changes. That's the truth of divorce. Everything changes, and you can never go back. This is because of Marcus, isn't it? Grace said suddenly. She was 17, perceptive, too smart for her own good. He quit 2 weeks ago. You've been weird since then, and Mom's been... She stopped, her eyes widening as she made connections I didn't want her to make. Oh my God, did you find out about them? Silence. Terrible, confirming silence. Sarah's face went white. Grace! You knew? David stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. You knew Mom was cheating, and you're just, what, walking away quietly? That's not like you. You don't back down from anything. I felt Emma's hand tighten around mine, warning me, begging me, don't tell them the rest. Don't destroy them to defend yourself. It's complicated, I said weakly. Complicated? David laughed, harsh and angry. She cheats on you and you're the one leaving? That's not complicated. That's pathetic. Why are you protecting her? Because if I don't protect her, I expose you. Because the truth would turn you inside out. Because I love you more than I hate her. Your father is doing what he thinks is best, Sarah said, her voice tight. For who? Michael demanded. He was 19, studying business, always the analytical one. Best for who? Because from where I'm sitting, this looks like you're running away. He was right. I was running. Running from a truth that would poison them all. Running from a choice between my pain and their innocence. running because staying meant watching them grow up knowing I wasn't their father, and leaving meant they'd think I abandoned them for no good reason. Either way, I lost them. But one way, they kept themselves. "I need you all to understand something," I said, my voice breaking. "This divorce has nothing to do with how much I love you. You are the best part of my life, all of you. That, never. Never." "Then why are you leaving?" Sophie whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Because I'm not your father. Because your mother built a lie so perfect that dismantling it would destroy 7 people instead of just 1. Because sometimes love means walking away. Because sometimes the truth is a violence you can't inflict on people you love. Because sometimes staying causes more harm than leaving," I said. It was the closest to truth I could get. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I left the table before I could say anything else, before I could crack open and spill everything. Emma followed me to my study, shut the door behind us. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I know what that cost you. Thank you for not telling them." "They hate me now," I said. "They think I'm abandoning them over nothing." "Better they hate you than hate themselves," she replied. "Better they think you're weak than know they're the product of a 23-year deception. You did the right thing." But it didn't feel right. It felt like dying while still breathing. 3 months after the divorce announcement, Emma called me at 2 in the morning. I'd been awake anyway. Insomnia had become my constant companion. The apartment I'd rented in the city was sterile and silent, nothing like the house full of children's voices I'd left behind. When I saw her name on my phone screen, my heart stopped. Nothing good happens at 2 a.m. "I need to see you," she said. Her voice was wrong, tight, controlled in a way that meant she was barely holding it together. "Now, please." I met her at an all-night diner in New Haven, halfway between my apartment and Yale. She was waiting in a booth when I arrived, a cup of untouched coffee in front of her. She looked exhausted, hollowed out, like someone had scooped away everything soft and left only edges. "I went to see Marcus," she said without preamble, "at his apartment. I needed answers about who I am, about where I came from, about why I have his eyes and his smile and his goddamn stubborn streak." She laughed, but it was bitter, broken. "He showed me pictures. Baby pictures of me that I'd never seen. Pictures of him holding me, feeding me. Pictures that were hidden in a box in his closet like contraband." My throat closed. I'd known this moment would come eventually, known that Emma was too smart, too persistent to live with partial truths. But knowing it was coming didn't make it easier. "He told me everything," she continued, "about how it started with Mom, how he thought I was the only one, how he found out about the others the same day you did. He cried, Dad. Marcus cried in front of me and said he was sorry for existing, for being born, for loving the wrong woman." She looked at me with those green eyes, his eyes. "How do you apologize for existing?" "Emma." I asked him if he regrets me, if he wishes I'd never been born. You know what he said? Tears were streaming down her face now, but her voice stayed steady. He said I'm the only good thing that came from his biggest mistake, that looking at me is equal parts joy and agony because I'm proof that love and destruction can wear the same face. I reached across the table, took her hand. It was cold, trembling. "You're not a mistake. You're not destruction. You're my daughter." "But I'm not, though, am I? I'm his. Biologically, genetically, fundamentally his. You raised me, you loved me, you gave me everything. But he made me. So what does that make us? What are we to each other if not father and daughter?" It was the question I'd been asking myself for 3 months. The question that kept me awake at 2 a.m. in a sterile apartment, staring at ceiling tiles and wondering if love built on lies could still be called love. "You're my daughter," I repeated, more firmly. "Biology doesn't change that. It doesn't change 21 years of loving you. Doesn't erase teaching you to ride a bike or helping you with calculus homework or walking you through your first heartbreak. Those moments were real. That love is real." "But would you have chosen me?" she asked quietly. "If you'd known from the beginning, if the doctor had handed you those DNA results the day I was born, would you have stayed? Would you have loved me anyway? Or would you have looked at me and seen Marcus's child and walked away?" The question hung between us like smoke, heavy, suffocating, because I didn't know the answer. I wanted to tell her I would have loved her regardless, that I was noble enough, selfless enough, big enough to love a child who wasn't mine. But I didn't know. I'd never been tested that way. "I don't know," I admitted, and watched something crack in her face. "But I know this. I chose you every day for 21 years. I chose to be your father. And now that I know the truth, I'm still choosing you. That has to count for something." She was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Marcus wants to be in my life." "As what? I don't know. He doesn't want to replace you. He just... something. Some acknowledgement that he's not just the driver. That he's my father too, even if he never got to claim that title." The possessiveness that surged through me was ugly, violent, mine. Something primitive in my brain screamed, "She's mine. I raised her. I loved her. I earned her." But she wasn't mine. She'd never been mine. She was her own person, caught between two men who both loved her for different reasons. "What do you want?" I asked, forcing down the jealousy. "Not what Marcus wants, not what I want. What do you want?" "I want it to not hurt," she whispered. "I want to look in the mirror and not wonder which parts of me are you and which parts are him. I want my siblings to know the truth so I'm not carrying this alone. I want Mom to face consequences for what she did. I want the last 3 months to be a nightmare I can wake up from." Her voice broke. "But mostly, I want my dad back. The one who used to make pancakes on Sunday mornings and sing off-key in the car. The one who believed I could be anything. I want things to be simple again." "They'll never be simple again," I said gently. "But they can still be good. Different, but good." "Can they?" She looked at me with such desperate hope that it hurt. "Can you really love me the same way now that you know?" I stood up, slid into the booth beside her, and pulled her into my arms the way I'd done 1,000 times before. She collapsed against me, sobbing in a way that seemed to come from somewhere deep and ancient, from that place where children grieve when their worlds fracture. "I love you," I said into her hair. "That hasn't changed, won't change. Biology doesn't get a vote. You're stuck with me." She laughed through her tears. "Even though I'm not really yours?" "Especially because you're not really mine," I said. "Because it means I'm choosing you every single day, on purpose." 3 months into the separation, Marcus called me. I almost didn't answer. Seeing his name on my phone still triggered something violent in my chest. Rage mixed with grief, mixed with exhaustion. But curiosity won. Or maybe masochism. I picked up on the 4th ring. "We need to talk," he said. "No preamble, no pleasantries. It's about Emma." My blood went cold. "What about Emma?" "She came to see me, asked me questions. She knows. I don't know how, but she knows." We met at the same diner. Different booth, same mediocre coffee. Marcus looked worse than before. Thinner, grayer, like the secret was eating him from the inside out. He slid a photograph across the table. Emma as a baby, maybe 6 months old, sitting on Marcus's lap in what looked like our old living room. Marcus was smiling, genuinely smiling, and baby Emma had her hand on his face. "I forgot this existed," he said quietly. "Sarah gave it to me years ago, said it was the only picture of us together. I kept it hidden in my apartment. Emma found it when she came over. She asked me point blank, 'Are you my biological father?' I couldn't lie to her, not when she was looking at me like that." "What did you tell her?" "The truth, that I loved her mother, that I didn't know about the others until recently, that I'm sorry for what my selfishness cost her, cost all of you." He paused. She cried. Then she said something that broke me. She said, "I have two fathers, and I'm terrified of losing both of them." I felt that like a physical blow. Emma was caught between us, between the man who raised her and the man who made her. Neither of us complete, both of us necessary, both of us sources of pain. "She asked me not to tell the others," Marcus continued, "said it would destroy them, said you'd already sacrificed everything to keep the secret. She's protecting everyone, you, me, her siblings, even Sarah. She's 21 years old, and she's carrying this alone because she thinks it's her job." Guilt crashed over me. I'd put that burden on her. I'd made her my co-conspirator in this lie. What kind of father does that to his daughter? What kind of man? "There's something else," Marcus said, pulling out another envelope. "I've been looking into Sarah, her past, her family. I needed to understand how someone could do this, how someone could orchestrate 23 years of deception without cracking." He pushed the envelope toward me. "Her father cheated on her mother, chronically, for 40 years. Her mother stayed, played the perfect wife, raised kids who weren't sure which ones were actually their fathers. Sound familiar?" I opened the envelope. Documents, photos, a family tree that looked more like a maze. She learned this from her mother? "She perfected what her mother couldn't finish," Marcus said. "Her mother stayed with a cheater and suffered. Sarah found a way to have everything: security from you, love from me, children she chose the father of. She fixed her mother's mistake by becoming something worse." The psychology of it was staggering. Sarah hadn't just betrayed me. She'd engineered a life where she controlled everything, where she was never the victim her mother was, where she got to choose her children's genetics, her husband's resources, and her lover's presence. She'd turned trauma into strategy. "Does Emma know about this?" I asked. "No, and I don't think she should. Let her think her mother is just a cheater, not an architect of multi-generational trauma." Marcus leaned back. "But you should know. You should understand that this wasn't personal. You were a role in her play. I was too. We were both cast for specific purposes." "That doesn't make it hurt less." "No," he agreed, "but it helps explain why. And sometimes understanding the why is the only peace you get." We sat in silence for a moment. Two men who'd been played by the same woman. Two men who loved the same children for different reasons. Two men who couldn't hate each other as much as they wanted to, because hatred required energy neither of us had left. "What are you going to do?" I asked. "About the kids, about your biological children." "Nothing," Marcus said firmly. "Emma knows. That's enough. The others, David, Sophie, the rest, they don't need to know. They have a father. You. I'm just the driver who quit." His voice cracked slightly. "But I'll always wonder. When I see David on the street someday, if I run into Sophie at a coffee shop, I'll wonder if they ever figured it out, if they ever looked at their birth certificates and did the math." "They won't," I said, though I couldn't be sure. "People don't question what they've always known." "Like we did?" Marcus smiled sadly. "We knew, deep down. We both knew something was wrong. We just chose not to look." He was right. There had been signs. Sarah's insistence on Marcus staying employed, the children's features, the way they gravitated toward him. I'd chosen blindness because the alternative was this hollowed-out existence where every memory was contaminated by truth. "For what it's worth," Marcus said as we stood to leave, "you're a good father. Better than me. I gave them genetics. You gave them everything else." "Genetics matter," I said bitterly. "They matter less than you think," he replied. "Ask Emma. She'll tell you." Sophie's 8th birthday fell on a Tuesday, 6 months after I'd moved out. 6 months of weekend visitations and stilted phone calls and the slow, agonizing process of becoming a part-time father to children I'd once lived with every day. Sarah had asked if I wanted to come to the party. I'd said yes before I could think better of it. The house looked the same. Balloons, streamers, a pink princess cake on the dining room table. Sophie's friends running through the rooms I used to walk through every morning. Sarah moving through the kitchen like I'd never existed there. And Marcus was there, in the garage, working on something, because of course he was. He'd been rehired a month after I left. Sarah's insurance policy, her comfort, her choice. Sophie ran to me when I arrived, threw her arms around my waist and squeezed like she could hold me in place through sheer force of love. "Daddy, you came! I told everyone you'd come!" 8 years old. Still young enough to believe in the permanence of love. Still innocent enough to think divorced parents can coexist in the same space without the air turning to acid. I held her and breathed in her strawberry shampoo and wished, God, how I wished, that DNA didn't matter. That I could look at this child and not see Marcus's nose, his chin, his genetic stamp on a person I'd loved since the moment I'd held her in the hospital and counted her fingers. I'd been there when she was born, cut the umbilical cord, stood in that delivery room believing I was witnessing the arrival of my daughter. Had that moment been real, or was it a performance I'd given without knowing I was acting? David avoided me, stayed on the other side of the party with his friends, shooting me looks that were equal parts anger and confusion. He still didn't understand why I'd left, thought I was weak for abandoning Mom over an affair. If only he knew. If only any of them knew that I hadn't left because of betrayal. I'd left because staying would have meant living a lie so big it would have crushed me. Would have turned me into Sarah, someone who could look at truth and choose fiction because it was more convenient. Emma found me on the back patio, away from the noise. She'd driven up from Yale for the party. She looked tired, older than 21. "You okay?" she asked. "I'm watching my daughter," I stopped, corrected myself. "I'm watching Sophie turn 8. I'm as okay as I can be." "She's still your daughter," Emma said firmly. "Biology doesn't erase 8 years." "Doesn't it?" I looked at her. If I'd known from the beginning, if I'd seen those DNA results the day she was born, would I have loved her? Would I have stayed up with her when she was sick? Would I have read her bedtime stories and taught her to swim? Or would I have looked at her and seen Marcus's child and walked away? Emma was quiet for a moment. Then, "I think you would have loved her anyway, because that's who you are. You show up. You do the work. That's what makes you a father, not the genetics." I wanted to believe her. Wanted to think I was noble enough to love a child who wasn't mine by biology. But I didn't know. I'd never been tested in that way. I'd loved these children believing they were mine. Now that I knew they weren't, did that love count? Could you love someone based on a lie and call it real? "Marcus is in the garage," Emma said carefully. "Have you talked to him?" "Not since the diner. What's there to say?" "Maybe, thank you." I stared at her. "Thank you? For what?" "For loving Mom when you couldn't. For being there when you weren't. For giving me life." She paused. "I know that's hard to hear, but it's true. You were building your empire. He was building your family. Both of you made me who I am." The maturity in her voice stunned me. She wasn't choosing sides. She was acknowledging a complexity I'd been too angry to see. Marcus hadn't stolen my children. He'd filled a void I'd created. I'd been an absent father long before I discovered I wasn't a biological one. "I don't know if I can forgive him," I admitted. "You don't have to forgive him," Emma said, "but you can acknowledge that he's not a villain. He's just a man who loved the wrong woman and made choices he can't take back. Kinda like you." That hit home, because what was I but a man who'd loved the wrong woman and made choices I couldn't take back? I'd chosen work over presence, money over time, empire over family. And by the time I'd realized my mistake, Marcus had already filled the space I'd left empty. Sophie came looking for me, dragging me inside for cake. I sat between David and Grace, singing happy birthday to a child who shared none of my DNA, but all of my heart. I watched her blow out the candles, 8 of them, one for each year of her life, and make a wish I'd never know. And I realized something sitting there in that room full of people who used to be mine. Love isn't about ownership. It's not about blood or biology or legal rights. It's about showing up. It's about choosing every single day to be present for someone even when it costs you everything, even when it hurts, even when the person you're loving is the product of the worst betrayal you've ever experienced. I'd loved these children for years thinking they were mine. The DNA results didn't change those years, didn't erase the love I'd poured into them, didn't negate the father I'd tried to be. I'd failed in a lot of ways. I'd been absent, distracted, too focused on building an empire to notice I was losing my family. But I'd shown up when it mattered. I'd been there at births and birthdays and broken bones. I'd been a father in every way except genetics. And maybe that was enough. Before I left that night, I did something I never thought I'd do. I walked into the garage, found Marcus there organizing tools. He looked up when I entered, his face wary, expecting anger, expecting confrontation. "Thank you," I said. The words tasted like ash, but I said them anyway. For loving them when I was too busy to, for being what they needed when I wasn't. Marcus's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry," he said hoarsely, "for everything. I'm so sorry." I know, and I did. I could see it in every line of his face. The guilt, the regret, the knowledge that he'd destroyed a man's life even if he hadn't meant to. "Take care of them. When I'm not here, make sure they're okay." He nodded. "I will. I promise." I walked out of that garage feeling lighter than I had in months. Not forgiven, not healed, but maybe, finally, moving towards something that looked like peace. Conclusion. It's been 2 years since the divorce. 2 years since I discovered that everything I believed about my family was fiction. 2 years of therapy and sleepless nights and slowly rebuilding relationships with 7 children who still don't know the full truth of where they came from. Emma and I are close. She's the only one who knows everything, and she carries that knowledge with a grace I'll never understand. David and I are working on it. He's starting to see that there were things he didn't know, complications he couldn't understand. Sophie still calls me Daddy. That hasn't changed. I see them on weekends, holidays, important moments. I'm not the father who lives in their house anymore, but I'm still their father. I'm choosing to be their father every day, despite the DNA, despite the betrayal, despite everything. Because here's what I've learned. Family isn't about biology. It's about choice. It's about showing up. It's about loving people even when love is complicated and messy and built on foundations that aren't what you thought they were. It's about looking at a child who doesn't share your genes and deciding, actively choosing, to be their parent anyway. I don't know if that makes me noble or a fool. Maybe both. But I know this. Those 7 kids didn't ask to be born into a lie. They didn't ask for their mother's deception or their father's failures. They're innocent in all of this, and they deserve a father who chooses them. So I do. Every single day, I choose them. And maybe that's what love actually means. Not biology, not obligation, just choice. Deliberate, painful, beautiful choice. If this story touched something in you, if it made you think about family differently or love differently or forgiveness differently, then I need you to do something for me. Hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment and tell me, what does family mean to you? Is it blood or is it choice? And subscribe to this channel, because I'm going to keep sharing my truth. The messy, complicated, painful truth about what it means to be human. About what it means to fail and still try to be better. About what it means to love people who maybe aren't yours in the way the world defines ownership. We're all just trying to figure this out. Let's figure it out together. Thank you for listening to my testimony. Thank you for carrying this story with me. You're not alone in your pain. None of us are. Until next time, choose love, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard.